Echoes of an Exorcism. A story written by nmwrites. Part 2. Posting this certainly awoke my imagination. I could barely sleep last night, thinking I heard sounds all night long. Tapping on windows and scratching on doors. They call it no sleep for a reason. I found this second letter stuffed under one of the beds, and it obviously happened after the first one. I haven't found more. My sweet Dana, I hope I remember where I left off. These things slip a little, you see. I see the tale I must lead us on this journey through in my head, but remembering where I stopped off to rest is difficult. It's things like that, or if your address begins with a 15 or a 51, that cause me the most annoyance. Will you think of me the same after this? There are times I've wondered if you know, but of course you don't. You can't. Will you blame when you learn I killed my sister? That I ruined my family? Is there grace in your heart for that terrified little girl? I can only describe the discussions that followed as fierce. Ashley was bound to her bed for her own safety, Daddy said, while the doctor tended to Henry's wounds. I still remember her screaming as she was carried to her room, an inhuman wail that haunts me still. Mr. Hawks called for the priest in town, Father Pierre, and I heard him tell Daddy that he had suspected Ashley was possessed for some time. That darkness lurked inside her tiny body. I will forgive many people, many things, but I will never forgive Mr. Hawks for this. The manor was suddenly in motion, and I felt that something dangerous moved beneath the surface, searching for freedom. I couldn't make sense of the bedlam, and I burst into tears whenever I saw Daddy or Jack, or when the doctor let me sit by Henry's bedside. Children should not have to deal with such things. No one should. I knew somehow that once events sprang into motion, there would be no stopping them. The next night, Daddy called the staff together. He thanked everyone for their hard work. And I thought in that moment, standing in the main hall with everyone staring at him, that he seemed frailer than ever before. He stepped aside, letting the priest speak. Young Ashley has been stricken with a demon, Father Pierre began, and he listed his reasons for believing she had been possessed, as he had studied these things in some faraway land, lessons hard won in his youth. She did not have a normal appetite, and many people felt cold when around her. She had flown into a rage and attacked Henry, who was easily 3 times her size. Mr. Hawks claimed he had heard her speaking in a different language she should not know, and that she knew of occurrences before they happened, that once she had remarked on the arrival of a visitor a full hour before they made it to the manor. I fought then. I fought for Ashley. I fought against Mr. Hawks. I hated him so much. I still do. I screamed at the staff. I said that Ashley had always been a picky eater, and the staff snuck her sweets during the day, despite knowing it ruined her appetite more, because they loved how she smiled at them. I told them the entire house was drafty in the winter, that any room might be cold if the wind blew. I said that she had learned the words she spoke from the traveling singer the year before, that they had all seen him, and that there remained a spot in the south tower where you could see clear to the village. that we often played a game where we watched people departing for the manor, trying to guess who would come by, their manner of walk and dress, and then waiting for their arrival to see if we guessed correctly. I can still see their eyes, gentle and caring and sad. They saw a scared child in front of them, innocent and longing to protect her sister. They weren't wrong either, but I realized in that moment that no one would believe my words. No one would protect Ashley from what came next. The priest announced he would begin the exorcism. Daddy and Jack and Mr. Hawks and several men from the staff would assist him. Father Pierre had traveled in his youth and was well versed in these things. Jack whispered in my ear. If anyone could drive off the beast living inside Ashley, this old demon hunter could, he reassured me. The men began to prepare, and I watched them hand out Bibles and crucifixes, readying themselves for what came next. Inside her room, Ashley began to scream, no doubt knowing what stood in her future. I pleaded with the men not to do it. I told them a mistake had been made. They avoided my eyes as I beseeched each of them in turn, each turning away, unwilling to make eye contact with the terrified young child before them. Mr. Hawks pulled aside Daddy, whispering that he knew such things could harm a young woman's reputation, and he would be willing to marry Ashley when she came of age, to ensure our family faced no disruptible rumors. My heart broke in that moment, both realizing what fate Ashley faced if she survived this ordeal, and that Daddy felt gratitude at the disgusting offer made about a girl still a child. The men filed into Ashley's room and began their rites, and the screaming began immediately. I heard them chanting prayers for hours, while Ashley yelled at them to stop. Smoke dripped from beneath the door, and the lights throughout the entire house flickered, plunging me in and out of darkness. I stayed there, seated in front of the door, for hours. I can still recall the words booming over and over. Despite my Latin being poor, some things you don't forget. The staff would come and stand outside from time to time, but none dared to stay for long. I was the only one who refused to leave. Strange noises erupted from the room from time to time, inhuman wails that boomed through the hall, and it was difficult to keep candles lit. Wind seemed to whip through the house, though the doors were all shut. The door flung open and a large frog jumped out. I barely had time to consider the strange creature before Mr. Hawks, covered in sweat, crushed it under his foot before slamming the door shut again. Screams echoed through the house, inhuman screams. Shadows danced in the hall where no one moved. The periods of darkness were much longer now, and in each one I felt something standing near me. I woke when the door opened, not realizing that the room had fallen silent, or even that I had fallen asleep. The men filed out, sweaty and tired and scared. I ran to Daddy and asked if Ashley was safe. He told me that it was not complete yet, but would be soon. He said the men needed to rest and to eat before continuing. The doctor appeared suddenly and summoned Daddy with a burst of whispers, and I suddenly found myself alone. the men rushing off to gorge themselves before continuing. What a strange world that was. Hours of excitement, punctuated with pure silence. I stood there alone. Alone with Ashley. I pushed the door open gently and slowly stepped into the room. Darkness covered most of her chamber, but her eyes swung towards me wildly and full of fear before taking on a pleading look. "It's not me," she said. I stood there frozen, unsure what I should do next. I saw the thick ropes that tied her to the bed, bodies of rats and frogs strewn about the room, the air cloudy with smoke and incense, and something else, something dark and rotten. "I saw it in the room," she continued. "You know me. You know I'm not possessed. But if they continue to try to do this, it is going to kill them all." I stared into her eyes, willed myself to divine whether she spoke the truth. Only Ashley appeared before me. Only her eyes looked back. And I stepped forward and released the ropes. I've never been so scared in my life, but also so sure. She leapt from the bed and kissed me on the forehead, telling me softly that we would be safe now, and then slipped through the door and into the hall. I stood there alone, seconds stretching into minutes, until the screams started. Darkness grows near, but I am afraid I do not have the strength to continue now. Soon, though, soon I will finish this awful tale. Your foolish grandma.